increased audits for FFLs, increased requirements for firearm safety card, and a California do not sell list. All bills that bit the dust trying to go through appropriations last week. What does this mean for the two-way movement moving forward for the rest of the legislative session? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. As weird as it sounds, we've got good news from Sacramento with appropriations votes happening last week. We saw some anti-2A bills bite the dust, and to talk us through that today, we have brought back the legislative director for CRPA. He's also the host of the Firing Line Radio on AM 590. You can catch him there every Saturday at 1 p.m. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Always a pleasure to be here, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, before we get into these victories today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps drive the information out there, especially the wins. We need to let Californians know that we have hope in this state. All it takes is a little bit of elbow grease and some advocacy there up in Sacramento. So please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It's a great way for you to directly contribute to the litigative and legislative efforts here in the state. So, Rick, let's go from least egregious to most egregious, and maybe we can end on a high note. Of course, you know what, Rick? Before we get into the actual bills, can you walk us through the process here? We had some votes in appropriations last week. What exactly does that mean up in Sacramento? How do these bills get to appropriations, and what was the chaos like up there last week as they were going through committee?
So those are all great questions. A normal bill will go through what are called policy committees. For us, most of those are things like on the Second Amendment only side would be always going through public safety. And then they may go through one of the other associative committees. It could be judicial, is another common place for some bills to end up. Same thing would be on the hunting side. They'll go through like water, parks, and wildlife, or in the Senate they call it natural resources. But they'll go through these policy issues, and then once they're out of the policy committees, then they usually get held at a desk. If there is a fiscal issue to the bill, meaning that the bill is going to cost the taxpayers of California money, then it has to go to appropriations in their respective house, and it has to clear appropriations by deadline this year. That was on Friday, May 23rd. And if it doesn't clear that, then the bill is dead. It is not going anywhere. So normally we don't have a lot of things that die in appropriations, but because there is a huge budget crisis, this became another place to try to block some bills. And the concern was the last 2 weeks, none of the firearm bills were showing up. And this is a tactic that the far left will use, Kevin. They'll stack as many bills as they can, and then the final day of the deadline, they'll run literally hundreds of bills within an hour or two through, which obviously in a normal day, we have maybe 12 to 15, maybe 20 bills in an entire like 8-hour day in a committee. So when you're talking hundreds, in this case, in the Assembly, it was close to 500, close to 600 on the Senate side that they tried to ramrod at the same time. It opens up the possibility for a lot of bills to just fly across the border. And so that's not what happened this year. So it's pretty huge.
So what exactly does it mean to have kind of a different set of argumentation? You know, normally we're arguing the logic on these bills. You know, we've talked about it before. There's a lot of circular thinking when it comes to a lot of these bills. Let's create a bill that creates a problem so that we can create another solution, and in the process take rights away from people, maybe take some money away from people in the form of taxation, just so that we can continue this loop. Now you kind of have a different aspect coming in here. You've got the fiscal portion where, and we've talked about this on this channel, all of these bills come with state mandated programs. Those state mandated programs cost money. So how big of an effect is the budget? Is it the budget that's really killing these bills? Is it the logic, or is it both?
It's both. We have been able, because thanks to the chapter program that CRPA runs and having all those volunteers along the state and all the people that join us on our quorum campaigns, which is the one-click politics that you talk about all the time on this show, all of that as a coalition force comes to bear, working with our allies like Gunners of California very closely on these bills, making sure that we're pushing back every chance we get. That is huge. And so when we look at these bills, what happens is there's a lot of pressure on the members of the at the dais. There's a lot of pressure on the budget, and we applied pressure every way we could, and the results were very positive.
Well, Rick, you're a subtle guy. So for any of you guys listening at home, what Rick just said is advocacy works. The one-click politics, it works, which is why we're going to continue in doing this. You know, we still have half a session to go. These bills didn't make it, but there are some bills that did. We're going to continue with the one-click politics, with the advocacy programs that we have, because it certainly is working. And I guess on that note, let's talk about these bills. You got three bills. You've got SB 320. That was the do not sell list, where essentially I called it a PSYOP, psychological operation to get Californians to remove their own Second Amendment rights by creating an internet-based program to allow people to put themselves on and remove themselves from a firearms do not sell list. You've got Assembly Bill 1187, which would have increased requirements to the firearm safety card. That's the loop-de-loop one, you guys. We talked about all of these bills individually. So if you're not fully aware of them, you can always go ahead and check out those videos on the channel link. But this one would have forced you to do live fire training, an 8-hour course, just to get a firearm safety card so that you could purchase a gun. The logic there is backwards, though, because if you don't have the FSC to purchase a gun, how are you supposed to do live fire training? And then you've also got the most sinister one, which, Rick, I want you to explain this one a little bit more in depth for people who haven't seen the past videos. Senate Bill 15 on the increased requirements for audits for FFLs. But before you explain that one, all of these bills, three bills, did not make it through appropriations last week, which is definitely good news. And Rick, why don't you talk about Senate Bill 15? Perhaps do you see it in the future coming back? And what was so bad about this one?
Well, any of these bills can always come back. These bills will not be back most likely until 27. We have a 2-year session, and so I don't think there's a lot of motivation for on a bill limit because they're limited to 35 bills. I think a lot of these authors already have bills lined up. I already know some do for us coming out in January, so I don't see these coming back then. But there's always the possibility of a gun and amend. So I just say that in case they did show up. Senate Bill 15 was particularly egregious on a couple things. It, in the name of public safety, which is, their little game that they like to play, Kevin, we talk about all the time. They said, wow, there's probably like at least 10 really bad gun stores that sell firearms that end up in horrific crimes. I mean, we think. So here's the deal. And this is where they were crafty. Any firearm used in a crime, and then the key term, or suspected of being used in a crime would count as a mark against a gun dealer who had sold the firearm. And so to a lot of people, that sounds like, well, okay, okay. Well, there were two problems with it. One, it created a system of called the top 10 list, that if you ended up on that list, you lost your right to be an FFL for a minimum of 2 years, which anybody doing business realizes. Shut down someone's business for 2 years, you put them out of business, period. That's what you just did. You put them out of business with no one's paying 2 years for rent on their place, so their place is gone, where their customer base was used to going is gone. All their contracts are dead. Like it's dead. You killed it. And how would you get there? You would get there because if you lived in a county, just as an example, that had issued a lot of CCWs, you would have a lot of people that had went out there, got a CCW. People get pulled over. You tell law enforcement, because it's the law, hey, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I have a CCW. They run everything through the system because that's also the law. No one's doing anything egregious at this point, but that becomes a flag. That becomes a black mark, according to Blake Spears' bill. And then what you end up having is someone being put out of business because they sold firearms to law-abiding citizens that followed the law because exactly what you said, Kevin, they created a situation that didn't exist so they could take away. And once they took away, XYZ gun store, that meant there was a vacancy on the top 10 list, and the top 10 has to have 10. So that means the next group would come up, and then the next group, and slowly you would wipe out every FFL in California.
Yeah, that is a systematic removal of FFLs in California, talking about more problems that require more solutions. Without FFLs, because of California laws, you can't import firearms or ammunition because anything imported that way would have to go through an FFL. So by removing those FFLs, you kind of remove the economics of firearms altogether. But good news, because the advocacy has won out here. Rick, of course, that's your ball field, so I will say congratulations and thank you to you. We're beating back a lot of bills this year. I know that there's still a few more to go, but thank you for doing what you're doing up there. We're going to continue and try to support your efforts as much as we can. I guess as a final thought, having these bills removed, and maybe not coming back in 2027, but for this session, what do we have to look forward to as these bills switch houses?
As we switch houses, we still have about half a dozen bills that are completely distasteful. We're going to be able to fight them. Remember, we have another run. The budget is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So the odds of some of those remaining bills getting through appropriations in the final house are not high. It doesn't look good. So, and what it's going to come down to is I appreciate the thank you, but I have the privilege and the honor of working with wonderful volunteers that listen to these videos and our radio shows to work with us through the chapter program that you run, Kevin. And I'm eternally grateful because without their assistance, some of this would not be possible. This is a collective effort. I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Well, it needs to get done, and we're going to continue doing it together. Thank you also to all you volunteers, all of you phone warriors out there. All of that advocacy has certainly been doing some good for the state. We continue to get that ball moving in the right direction. But Rick, I know you're a busy guy. Thank you very much for coming on, sharing the good news, because at the end of the day, that good news can be the thing that ends up getting us through the next hurdle. So thanks for coming on and sharing with us.
Always. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like this kind of content and you want to see more, as always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the videos. It really helps get this information out there. We've got our aim set on the next set of targets as these bills switch houses, and a lot of advocacy is going to be needed. These videos help do that. So it's a great way to directly contribute to the litigative and legislative efforts here in the state of California. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.